Hello everyone. I am Archie from the team of GISA Council. I welcome you all to the masterclass on ISMS Internal Audit webinar conducted by GISA Council. It is a non-for-profit organization committed to empowering individuals and organizations through specialized training and globally recognized certification. And our mission is to strengthen the cybersecurity and IT governance ecosystem by building skilled professionals through programs such as Associate Information Systems Auditor, CISA, CSAM, C-Risk Prep Training, ISO 27001 Lead Auditor, CISSP Prep Training, GDPR Specialist, and many more. Our director, Dr. Hiral Patel, is a visionary in the field of information technology and cybersecurity with over 16 years of global experience as a consultant and lead auditor. She is renowned for shaping the future of risk and compliances. Her passion lies in nurturing the next generation of professionals and guiding them into the dynamic world of information systems audit. In just more than 2 years since our establishment, GISA has proudly trained over 3,200 professionals across 60 plus countries, including participants from 170 plus global enterprises, with more than 30 Fortune 500 companies among them. It is my privilege to introduce Mr. Yagneshwar Iyer, a distinguished professional with over 30 plus years of experience in cybersecurity and IT governance. He holds certifications including CISA, CSAM, CDPSC, and has served in leadership roles such as CIO, CTO, and CISO. We look forward to gaining valuable insights from his vast expertise. Best wishes to all the participants. Now, sir, over to you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ashi. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I won't waste much time because
So you are not audible.
I have my thingy on. One sec.
He's audible. I think at least I can hear him.
Oh, good. Thank God.
Okay.
Yes,
Sorry
Wait,
about
wait,
that.
wait. Just give me a sec. I'll just make sure my AirPods are connected because sometimes they're not. Ooh. Mhm. They are connected, I think. Hopefully, yes. Okay. We're going to be this is a little bit of an intense session because I am notorious for taking all the time in the world, thinking that everybody is as free as I am. So we're going to quickly run through this today and try and have some time for some questions and answers. We're going to focus on internal audit teams, looking at the effectiveness of governance and execution of governance uh, uh, from an ISO 27001 information security management system perspective. Right, that's going to be the limited focus today, and this is a kind of a precursor to a 12-hour course that we are conducting, which I'll speak about in a couple of minutes. Now, why internal audit matters in information security management is that it ensures conformity and effectiveness. The word used here is effectiveness, and we will look at two types of effectiveness as we go along: effectiveness of governance and effectiveness of operations. They are both different. And then we'll see why governance and operations or management, as it's called. A quick word on what governance and management is. When we talk of management in colloquial language, we normally mean the senior leadership, top management. However, when it comes to information security, information auditing field, let us say, for lack of a better word, um, governance is the set of people who create a framework which sets the intent of the senior leadership, executive management for the rest of the organization to work. Governance is of any organization is just like laws in a country where there are certain set of lawmakers who create a framework under which all of us have to operate and live. And the same thing applies from with the governance framework to organization. The term management in these contexts refers to the people who execute the vision or the intent set out by the senior leadership in the governance framework. So that differentiation has to be clear. When we use the word management, we don't mean senior leadership. Okay. Internal audit, one of the most important benefits of internal audit is that it drives continual improvement. Now, note the word is continual improvement. We are it would be naive to look at perfection. It would be naive to expect perfection for two reasons. Is that no one can go from 0 to 100 instantly, right? Neither can a Ferrari. Even that takes, or a Bugatti Chiron takes a couple of 2 3 seconds to reach 0 to 100. So it takes time to get better. And as you're getting better, your environment is changing. As you are addressing your vulnerabilities, your risk, you are managing your risks, you have a certain idea of what kind of environment your business operates in. Suddenly you have AI and everything changes, right? Suddenly you have COVID pandemic, everything changes. So the business environment is dynamic. Suddenly you have a privacy regulation that you have to start working towards in the next 18 months. So all your risk assessments, all your approaches to managing data, your systems, your backups, everything changes. So business environment is affected by technology changes, by competition, by changes in your processes, by maybe mergers and acquisitions in your company, and of course by changes in law. Frameworks that you have adopted, say ISO 27001 we're talking about, that could change, which might require you to change your own practices, processes to ensure kind of compliance. So uh, um, a regulated and a properly formulated internal audit practice helps with continuous improvement. So there are two facets of continuous improvement, which is that against the standard, you try and keep improving, and also the adjust to newer needs of the business. Now, internal audit is mandatory for compliance. For example, 27001 mandates internal audits as a core component for performance evaluation. Now, performance here means performance as per 27001. This is not how fast things are. This is how compliant things are. This is how controlled things are. This is how transparent things are. All these attributes apply to all operations of information systems. Now, the difference is information systems. The word used here is not information technology, it is information systems. Difference quick is information technology is the infrastructure of IT that runs IT. Information systems are the combination of IT, software, services, maintenance, and all the other security practices that constitute a service being delivered to an organization. That differentiation is very important to understand between information technology and information systems. Okay. Um, Internal audit also, the importance of internal audit is that it demonstrates compliance to stakeholders and regulators and gives them comfort and confidence that their information systems are being managed according to a standard. Why do we have these standards? Why do we have these frameworks? What do we mean by ISO 27001? Why do we need it? Why do we need ITIL? Why do we need COVID? Why do we need the English language right now? I can start speaking in Tamil, right? Which for those of you who are not in India is a major language of India. Some of you, I know from your names, I could make out might understand Tamil. Most of you wouldn't, right? So we have a protocol here. We have an understanding that I'll speak in English so that everybody understands. A framework or a standard is just like that. It is once somebody says, "Oh, I am going to implement 27001 or I want to be compliant with 27001." Any one of us can go look it up, understand what that means, and then compare the performance of that organization against that framework and say, you are compliant here, you are deficient here, you are making progress here, you are not making progress here. Again, the important word is progress over perfection. Okay. Now, what I try to promote in all my sessions and what I also try to practice is a broadly 20-minute audit method, which is a streamlined, time efficient approach to enable auditors to complete a focused and effective audit per section. This is not a full audit, right? A full audit could take a couple of months. So per section, which we'll quickly talk about. Anything that you're auditing, any operation, any part of information system that you're auditing, you have to break it up in three parts, which is to plan. The planning phase requires you to define the scope, the objectives, and the criteria. We'll break these three terms down quickly in the next couple of slides. And then to match the scope, the objectives, and the criteria, you have to collect evidence using triangulation. Triangulation is a term that you might have heard with, for example, the global positioning system, right? Which uses triangulation of signals from satellites up in the air to tell you where you are. More or less, the concept is the same here. Basically, the advantage of triangulation is that you collect evidence to support your observations from two or three. Triangle means three independent sources. We'll take one example. Sometimes those three independent sources may not always be available. Therefore, one source that absolutely proves what your observation is good enough in many cases, where you can support take other supporting evidence as well. We'll look at a couple of examples of them in the coming slides. Okay, and then once you have evidence, you conclude the evidences. Now there is a very important rule for the conclusions or the observations you make based on evidence. And that important consideration as auditors is that if 1 year down the line, another person picks up your evidence, they should reach the same conclusion as you did. There should be no ambiguity, and which will also look at a few kind of terms that we should not use in our audits. Okay, the audit triangle that we just spoke about here, plan, sample, conclude. Here, an effective audit requires those three elements that we spoke about here: scope, objectives, and criteria. We'll quickly break down what those are. Scope defines what is included, what all you have to audit. Now, as an internal auditor, your audit work will probably be broken into two parts. One, you will have an audit charter, which delegates the right of the senior leadership or the governance framework that delegates the rights to internal audits to question and ask other teams of questions that ensure compliance with the governance framework that has been set. Now, if I were just, let's say, anybody in the organization, and I walk up to the CFO and ask them for some evidence, they'll ask me to buzz off, right? But when I'm an internal auditor, hi, anyone saying something? When I have been delegated the rights of the senior leadership as an internal auditor, and then I ask questions of any other employee or senior person in the organization for any evidence, for any information, for any data related that I require for my internal audit process, they are bound to give it, because the internal audit is nothing but an extension of the senior leadership asking those questions. Please remember that. Okay. The objectives state what the audit aims to achieve, such as verifying conformance with a standard or assessing effectiveness of the compliance. Now, we look at the difference between what I'm saying. You might be compliant, but your compliance may not be effective. Maybe you have to change the way you are doing things. You might be absolutely fine as per the when we have a law, we always speak about the letter of the law and spirit of the law, right? Something like that is what this means: verifying conformance or assessing effectiveness. The conformance is, I'm according to the letter of the law, I have maintained this record, but is that record maintenance really effective? Now, it's important to say, when we are auditors, internal or external, that doesn't matter. We have to look at ISMS, or Information Security Management, and especially ISO 27001 led ISMS practice as a continuous thread. We'll also look at that as I speak about that in a minute, as a continuous thread and not as disjointed segments, right? So we are not looking at this as an exercise, internal audit as an exercise for collecting evidence and submitting a report. What you have to see is, as a whole, is the information security management practice effective? That is the importance of an audit. Okay. Now, the criteria specifies the requirements against which the audit will be tested. So, for example, we're saying the 93 controls in ISO 27001, which are those that are applicable to us. Not all 93. The ISO, a framework like uh, 27001 or COBIT or ITIL is a generic framework that is designed for a wide variety of IS environments, information system environments. Not all controls may apply to all of them, right? Therefore, for example, if when there are certain parts which cover, say, personal information, If your organization doesn't have any of that, you may not need that part of the framework, right? If you don't have let's say you don't have any internal systems, all your systems are outsourced. I have worked with companies where everything is outsourced. The way you approach auditing those companies completely changes, because now there are external vendor dependencies. I think there is a bit of part of the vendor also we'll speak about here. Now let's look at an example of how the scope, objectives, and criteria can be fitted into for a particular scope of the audit. So let's say the scope of the audit says audit the HR system, and let's say Workday is a very popular HR platform which is used by hundreds of thousands of companies, maybe thousands of companies across the world, maybe not 100,000. So the process areas that you have to audit, that you have been asked to audit, that are there in the scope of the audit, are user access management for all new joiners. Movers are people who change roles within the organization, and people who leave the organization. That is what you are expected to audit, right? And the time period for that you have to look at for compliance, which we'll again look at, is those that are processed between January and March 2024, for example, right? What are excluded is emergency access rights given and contractor onboarding. For the purpose of this example, they are excluded, right? But in your audit charter, in your audit scope, they may be included. You have to adjust those accordingly. Now, the objectives of this audit are to verify access provisioning and deprovisioning controls are operating effectively. Now, what does that mean? What is the process of giving access to information systems to new employees? What is the process of changing access to information systems when people change their roles within departments? What is the process of taking away access when people leave? Are those processes working as expected, as they are supposed to? Are the controls effective? Now, what is an effective control? There are two things, right? People who are working in the organization should have rights to information systems as per their role, no more, and obviously no less. No less, they won't be able to do their job. If they have more rights, then they could make mistakes. They could commit maybe malicious acts. You don't know, right? And what could happen when people move roles? When people move roles, what happens is that many times they might be straddling two boards. They may, work in an old role, so they may have the rights to information systems for both roles for a while. Then everybody forgets about it, and this person transition away completely from the old role, but still carries rights, right? So how do you do it? How do you review what rights people have? What is your process of informing whoever is supposed to maintain those roles and access to information systems as to how which ones they should have, which ones they should take away? Important is not the process. Again, we will look at this example again. The importance is how effective it is. When you are, let's say, we always say, maybe once a month, review access rights given to different people, and you send them to their managers or the application owners or the process owners. And when you actually go and talk to them, you might find out that as an auditor, when you go and talk to them, so I get a list of my people, and they have these roles. These roles are fine. I just tick them, and I now what those roles can do, I don't know. Right? This is a typical thing you'll have. Now, what are they doing? They're doing a checklist. They're only doing a checklist. Somebody's supposed to send someone a list of rights that people have to certain applications or certain areas of information systems. That person simply ticks, sends it off. So while they are within the letter of the governance, which says access rights will be reviewed every month, is it effective? Not necessarily, right? And there are a lot of potential holes there, because nobody is really checking what rights those roles actually have, right? So the criteria to match against these objectives and scope could be, for example, clause 9.1 of ISO 27001 2022, which says monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation, or the Annex A control or internal policy. I've just used some policy number like from my own previous experiences, and the procedure that we want to check it, that is attached to the internal policy, is the joiner, mover, lever standard operating procedure, whatever version, right? I've just used some samples. So ISMS audits focus on three distinct layers, and these three distinct layers are there because uh, there are these 2 or 3 different kind of deficiencies or confirmances that we have to look for, right? So one of them is a clause-based clauses, which is part of the governance requirement, right? A clause-based audit, and you can have all these 3 different kind of audits in one audit. Your observations could be based on any of these 3. However, it's important to recognize which part, which kind of observation it is, so that you don't confuse the issue in your observation. And we'll quickly look at it. So the clause-based audit looks at governance, the risk methodology. Now, what is risk? We all know, I think we all understand what is risk. We are all here. Risk is the potential for loss. Uh, the job of IT management is to conduct IT operations in a way that IT meets business objectives while managing risks in an acceptable manner. Right? I'll leave you with that statement. I think you will all understand what that means effectively. So IT should know what assets they have. IT should know what data they have. IT should know what information assets they have. IT should have identified, not just know, they should have identified what risks are, what risks could affect those assets. And if those risk events happen, what is the probability of that risk event happening? What is the probability of an earthquake happening here? What is the probability of a fire? What is the probability of a server failure? What is the probability of power failure? What is the probability of rain, water seeping through my ceiling? You have to think of all those potential events and attach a probability, and then say, if this probability is high, this could be the impact on my business if this event happens. If this business impact on my business is, then it is a high risk or a low risk, or this could have so much value impact on my business. Has IT done that? That is the starting point for any IT, information security management practice, is to identify risks with that apply on all their information assets. Then an Annex A, which is ISO 27000 annexure, it tests specific technical control. This is the difference. The earlier one looked at governance. Now, if you remember just a minute ago, I said governance sets the intent of senior leadership of how the organization should run. Governance is strategic, whereas management is tactical. Management figures out the tactics or decides what tactics to employ to deliver the strategy set out by the governance. Right? If you just put those words together, you will also understand the difference between the control-based audit. Now, control is where? Control is required when you do things, right? When you do things. There is a law which requires you to cross the road at a zebra crossing when the traffic signal is red and when the pedestrian signal is green. That is the law. That the law says that, right? And then when you actually go and do it, that is the tactics. You actually walk there, you wait for the signal to turn red, you wait for the pedestrian signal to turn green, and then you walk on the zebra crossing. Yet you look left and right. That is the actual tactical part of executing the governance, right? In IT, management says this particular, or management expects this particular application service should run with 99.999% availability, right? You can only have 5 minutes of downtime in a year. Let's say that is the framework, that is the policy set. Now, how to meet that? How I need 2 servers, I need 2 databases, I need network here, I need internet connectivity here. All those things have to be tactically decided, and how to meet those requirements by the management, which is the IT management. Now, then when IT management meets the vision, now as in a control based audit, what are you checking? Are the controls that are implemented to meet the intent and the needs of the business set out in the governance framework for 99.999% availability of this application or service? Is that effective within the period that I've been asked to audit? Now, what are the things I need to look at to check if it is effective? Right? Then you start your control-based audit. This is just one example of a everyday life control that we implement. What is the control when we are crossing the road? Why do we have that control? So that we don't get run over by a vehicle, right? That is why we are implementing those controls, which is waiting for the red light of traffic light, waiting for the pedestrian light, and then crossing on the zebra crossing. These are all controls to minimize the risk to my life. Similarly, having a second database server, having a second application server, having two internet links, having UPS supplies as backup power, all those are what? They are controls that reduce the risk of those events that can cause damage to business operations. And that is what a control-based audit looks at, is the effectiveness of controls in mitigating the identified risks to information assets. Remember this, please. Okay. And those are all technical controls, because we are talking of information systems. So obviously the controls mostly will be technical. There are some human controls also, which we'll talk about later. A process-based audit evaluates end-to-end business processes. I've given you some examples. Or change control. Change control and change management is also a very important part of internal audit, because change causes disruptions, right? And not making changes also causes disruptions. Let's say Microsoft discontinued support for Windows 10 in October 14. I have a client of mine who's still running some 15 machines on Windows 10 on October 14. Now, if you change, there is a chance, there is a risk that your some applications may not work. Many companies even today have a contract with Microsoft, and they're paying them a lot of money to continue to support Windows 7, because their applications don't run on Windows 10 or Windows 11. Even now, Windows 7 is still being maintained by Microsoft as a special agreement. I don't know if it is still valid, but my guess is it will be, right? Because the applications only run for the longest time. ATMs all over the world were running on Windows 95 and then on Windows XP, even years after Microsoft had stopped. Now, there was a risk to those systems when these companies did not upgrade. So when they did not do something, when they did not change, there was a risk. There was, because there were vulnerabilities which were not patched in those systems. But changing those systems also had a risk. So proper change management control is a part of ISMS audit, which is why I mentioned it, that change control, auditing the process of managing change there, and what effectively identifying the risks of making the change, and then controlling or mitigating the risk, or minimizing the effects or the impact on business of disruptions from those change is part of an internal audit system. Now, this upfront classification is crucial to prevent common mistake of mixing management system gaps with technical control gaps. These are governance strategy versus management tactical gaps. We look at a quick example, right? A mature ISMS program requires a strategically balanced annual audit plan that incorporates all three audit types for comprehensive assurance. The word here is assurance. The job of any auditor is to give assurance to the sponsor of the audit that whatever is in the audit scope, whatever is the objective of the audit, is being met by whoever are supposed to implement that part of the governance framework. Now, a practical example, auditor finds that backup logs show consistent failure of the backup job, right? Now, if you write a finding against the risk assessment process, that is a management system gap, that will be incorrect, because the risk assessment has clearly identified the need for a backup. Now, the risk assessment may be not appropriate, but the risk assessment has done its job. The governance team has done their job. They have identified backup as a necessary control for a particular identified risk to a certain information asset. So the governance part is not lacking. However, the tactical part of implementing that governance is lacking, because the backup is failing, right? So you have to write that the backup control is not effective, right? Now, failing doesn't mean that it is not working at all. It may be working a few times, it may not be working a few times, but then say, listen, it is working 50% of the times, don't write me up. No, that is wrong, because the governance requires, for example, that the backup must be performed every night, or every hour, or every week. And if you miss one, right, you are putting the organization, or that part of the organization, at additional unidentified risk, right? The risk assessment didn't fail here. right? They didn't fail to identify the need for backups. The implementation of the backup control failed. So selecting the right clause or annexure and to match your observation against that is also important, because the focus then changes. If you make a mistake and say this is a governance mistake, then somebody else will be wasting time on it. The governance team might waste time on it and then figure out, oh, this is not our fault, we said we need backups. Now, what is the quality of the backup, or how the backup works, whether it fails or not, is not the problem of the governance. It's a problem of the management of the tactical implementation of the strategy, right? So this big thing. Now, important thing that auditors must validate ISMS as an integrated system, not just disconnected documents and tools. This is what I mentioned initially on the first slide. We should implement a spine test. Why is it called a spine test? If you know your spine is made up of all these vertebrae. They're all connected, right? They're all connected. They work together to deliver what? They work together to deliver stability of your body. Similarly, the information security management practice should be a set of connected practices which deliver a secure working environment to the organization. It starts with identifying a risk. Identifying risk. Now, to identify the risk, if you don't know what assets you have, you won't be able to identify the risk. Then you have to select how you have to manage those risks, right? Risk management depends on the risk appetite of the organization. How much risk is a company is going to take? Now, you all know, for example, you have in India, you have Uber and you have Ola, right? There is, or say in the US, you would have Uber and you would have Lyft, right? And similarly, Grab in South Asia, and then every industry has competition. There's practically no industry where there is no competition. Now, if there was one company in one industry, a competitor comes, he comes with a slight differentiation and he comes with a little different risk appetite. He knows there is a huge company already there with a huge market share, but he is willing to take the risk of eating into that big company's market share. So there, they may be selling the same product, more or less the same product, slight differentiation, but they are addressing the same customer. So their risk perception is different. Similarly, in IT, you might find an Oracle database in one company, you might find an Oracle database in another organization. You may find two databases in your own organization as internal auditors. Their risk assessment could be different. Just because it's a database doesn't mean that the risk assessment will be the same. The risk assessment will depend on what events can happen to it, what can go wrong with it, and what is the potential for loss, right? And it will also depend on any rules and regulations. You can't say that, oh, the law of the country needs this kind of a protection, but I am willing to take the risk. That is not acceptable. You can take a risk within the confines of the law, but if the law requires you to have a backup, like for example, in India, all stock market operators have to have hot sites, right? They have to have an alternative site from where they can switch. Banks have such similar requirements, right? They have to have alternate processing facilities where they can switch to in case their main data center goes. So these are required by law. You can't say I'll take a risk, right? Now, within that regulatory parameter, the regulatory requirement, different companies could have, and within this, your own company, there will be different assets, will have different impacts, and their risk assessment will be different, and their risk mitigation and their treatment of the risk will also differ, right? And that you have to understand as an auditor. Now, also, then verify the statement of applicability, which includes controls, or if you don't need a control, this SOA statement of applicability of, in this case, what we're talking about is ISO 27001 2022. What controls from that apply to the process that you are auditing. And if you think there is a particular control that apply, but the department or the team has not used it, or is not complying with it, they may have a reason, they may have a technical or a strategic reason to say that, oh, this control doesn't really apply to us because we don't do this in our team, in our process, in our company, as the case may be. Then you check whether the controls, one, have been implemented according to what the governance framework says, and then also check if the control is working effectively. Now, there are two words I leave you with here. Every control has an objective, right? If the control meets its objectives, the control is effective. right? If you have a backup that you do, you're supposed to do a backup every night, and that backup works successfully every night, right, without failure. And occasionally there are failures, but they are rectified, and the backup job is redone. Therefore, the control is now whether that daily night backup is enough or not. That is a governance issue, right? But if the governance requires that a daily backup has to be done, and the IT team is regularly doing daily backups, there might be occasional failures, and that is all right. Their response to that occasional failure is what is important. If you remember on this side, we said consistent failures. Consistent failures are not good. Occasional failures are good. Now, what could be occasional failure? I can't give you a 5% failure is good and a 10% failure is bad, right? That you have to see within the context of the criticality of that data. For some data, maybe failures are all right because that data is not critical, right? Cafe, how many coffees did the cafe dish out free for employees? May not be a very critical data as compared to the sales information. So if the sales data or the ERP data backup is failing every day, that is a problem as opposed to say the cafe data. Anyone saying something? No. Okay, cool.
Yes, yes. I
Yes,
think
please.
there is some glitch in screen. Now it is okay. Fine.
You cool? Should I continue?
Yes,
All
please.
right. Okay, cool. Right. And then verification that a control is effective is one thing. How do you establish, how do you promote a practice of continuous improvement? Is to see is the people who are expected to implement the control, are they monitoring if that control is effective? Right? And what steps are they taking to fix where the control fails? So let's take the example of a backup. I just mentioned if the IT team is recognizing that, listen, my backup is failing because I'm running out of space, right? They have identified the root of the cause of that failure of backup, and then they have maybe done something, right? Preferably some automated process. They say, okay, I don't need to keep backup for 15 days. I only need to keep backup for a week. So can I automate the process? I'll keep deleting backups that are more than 1 week old. I'll only keep 1 week's backup so that I have space, my backups don't fail. Now, are you monitoring your control? It might be effective. A backup that fails 50% is you as an auditor might say it is 50% ineffective. IT might very well say, but the control is 50% effective. What have you done from the 50% to go to 80% or 90%? Right? What did you do? Did you even bother to do something about it, or are you just taking that as a fact of life and going ahead? Okay. Confirm issues, feed, kappa are corrective and preventive actions. Um, so any issues that you, which is what I said just now, issues that you feed, issues that you face, backup failure, they should feed corrective and preventive actions on part of the people who are responsible for those actions and for management review. So to ensure a practical application, select one high impact and trace it to end in every audit cycle. We'll quickly go through it. Okay. We have a course on internal auditor, which unlike what the picture says, I will be conducting. So you don't have the benefit of the gentleman in the picture. You're going to be stuck with me. Starts on 20th Feb, 3 days, 4 hours a day, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. India Standard Time. 28th February, 1st March and 7th March, 12 CP credits. For details, you can contact GISA Council. There, you have any questions, these are the broad topics we'll be covering. The focus will be on being an effective internal auditor, right? Again, the word is effective. An effective internal auditor ensures those three benefits that we spoke about. Make sense so far? Is this making sense so far, guys? Anyone?
Yes.
All right. So, phishing. Phishing, we all know what phishing is. You get an email, especially from some geographies, you get that email. They have stopped now because anti-phishing measures on email have become very strong. That you won a lottery, 1 million or $10 million. Actually, I don't know why They always talk of this huge, unbelievable amount. If they said $1,000, I might even believe them, right? Or 1,000 rupees, I might still believe them. But they start off by telling me I won $100 million, and then there's no chance, right? The phishing also has to be sensible. So how would you do it? First, you would see, has the organization identified phishing as a valid risk, right? You will check a risk register. What is a risk register? It's a simple Excel file, let's say. It says, this is my information asset. What is my information asset? What does phishing do? They try to either take money out of you, or they try to fool you into entering your credentials. And they try to take over your credentials by making you enter a username, password, or your OTP, or whatever. They try to take over your account. That is what basically they're trying to do in most cases. So has the company identified that in their governance framework? Have they asked for the tactical management team to implement controls for that? That is your first stop. That is where you check first. Because if the governance framework is not there, then implementing that is optional. You may still find that the management has implemented it, but that is not good enough. It is like saying there is no law in my country that requires me to stop at red lights. There are no penalties, there is no law, but I'm stopping out of the goodness of my heart. Right? You need a law. That is the first step. And then you look at the what is the treatment of that risk that the organization has selected, that the governance frameworks sets in place. Now confirm that the risk treatment plan documents the chosen approach. So reduce risk through technical and awareness controls. Now technical controls are what for phishing? You maybe implement anti-phishing measures, right? Those your mail servers can have anti-phishing measures. If you're using Google Workspace or using Microsoft 365, or you have your own email server, any other email servers, enable anti-phishing and test if those anti-phishing measures are effective, right? And then also conduct training. Training is also a control. Training is not something you go and have lunch. I mean, that's why most people come. I understand that. That's what I go to for training. Are you giving me lunch? Then I'm coming, otherwise I'm not coming, right? Most of us. So, but training is an effective control. When I was a CTO, I used to send a mail every month, every 6 weeks, 8 weeks, educating people about how to spot spam, how to spot phishing attempts, how not to do things, how to create passwords. Over a period of time, over 2-3 years of 18 months, 24 months passed, I started getting mails from people. Ayer, this mails look like spam. Am I right? Then what I would do, I would take that example. I said, yes, you are right. In most cases, they were, thankfully. And then I would send that as an example to the rest of the organization. Again, say this person has been vigilant. This person has found. This is how this person identified this potential problem, right? And then by giving that person credit in public, the rest of them also said, oh, Iyer sends, the CTO sends email appreciation emails to the whole company. Let me also be vigilant. So that had some kind of a positive loop effect, right? Check the statement of applicability that it includes the relevant controls. For example, information security awareness training has been included in your statement of applicability. It is an important part for all organizations, irrespective of size, and it is not a big problem today. If nothing, have people sit in a room. Small organizations, we can't afford to get a trainer and pay them money. There are a million YouTube videos. Make them watch it, okay, and give them a small test, right? Just verify that justification is provided for any excluded phishing related controls. This could be technical controls, or this could be awareness controls. Awareness controls like training, or in my case, dissemination of information through emails. Okay. In the implementation, when you're checking the implementation, verify that anti-phishing controls actually exist, right? And they are effective. You can find logs, right? If logs are not enabled, you must say enable logs. Otherwise, I cannot comment on this because I don't have any evidence. Review training records, test email filtering rules, check MFA, enrollment rates. MFA is multi-factor authentication. Collect evidence, training completion reports, phishing simulation results. Now, there are many organizations in the world, typically large organizations, who will conduct phishing simulation. There are vendors who specialize in this. They will send an email to your organization's identified users, a bunch of users, sometimes all users from outside. They will have they will be mail. Now, how these things work is that if an employee clicks on that mail or downloads the document, they will immediately, the vendor who is being appointed for this phishing campaign will get an email notification that this person clicked on it. And that person, or whoever opened that email, whoever clicked on a link in that email, whoever downloaded the attachment and opened it, they will then be identified and they will be given training. So those are also very, very effective measures to make people learn the importance of vigilance. In my CISA classes, I teach the importance of the human firewall. A human being who is acting with knowledge as the firewall is your last line of, and is probably your best defense against most attacks. Okay, now then you move on to measurement. You confirm that phishing risk is actively measured. Review KPIs such as phishing simulation click rates, which is what I just mentioned to you. Reported phishing emails. How many phishing emails did the email system, Office 365 or Google Workspace, eliminate for you? That shows effectiveness of that system. Most of these commercial top grade email platforms like Google Workspace or Office 365, even the free Google Mail, if you see, it separates your promotional emails into a separate folder, and it does a great job of doing that. I normally go into the promotional folder. The only thing I do with this is delete. Of course, I also keep unsubscribing as much as I can, but I keep marking them as spam. And as a result of keep marking them as spam, Google, that machinery learns, and then it also uses information about other people who have marked as spam. If a lot of people are marking certain kind of emails as spam, Google will include it in their records and then try and then filter it out for everybody else, right? Now, to improve, uh, you know, uh, what you do is wherever you have failed. I give you the example, right? If you are an organization where you conduct a phishing campaign, right? You pay a vendor to send a simulated phishing email, and there are certain people who have clicked on it. You identify them, you set them up for special training, because what is the risk from there? We have to understand this. What is the risk? The risk is that if someone actually gets trapped by a phishing email and their credentials are somehow compromised, their system is somehow compromised, some malware gets installed on their system, it could spread to the rest of the network and it could damage that company's working. Okay. This end-to-end trace, these 6 steps, if you look at them, I have used phishing as an example of a risk, and how an internal auditor, can go through steps of identifying if phishing has been identified as a risk. You may not need it, right? Your say statement of applicability may say phishing doesn't apply to us, and they may have a justification for it. If they say it doesn't apply, ask them for a justification, right? And if you are happy with the justification, that's all right. But if they have included that, then you can take these steps to go through the evidence to see if that is being effective. Is phishing a risk being controlled effectively, or what can they do to improve it? Okay. And this framework is something you can apply to all aspects of all processes for all kind of audits that you do. This is the standard framework. There is practically nothing outside of these steps that you need to follow when you're auditing any process or any clause-based audit. Okay. Now, we said we will look at examples of how to triangulate evidence. Now, the important thing here is that all your observations should be based on evidence. Evidence has a couple of properties. Evidence should come to you from an authorized source. Yes, you might get some information from a whistleblower outside, or that your company, something is happening. But will you accept that without any evidence or proof? You will not. You will go and dig. You will check your own company's records. You will go and find out if that external person is right. He might well be right, or he might just be stirring a hornet's nest to keep everybody distracted. Anything is possible. So as auditors, you should always accept evidence from trusted sources. Those evidence, you should have reasonable guarantee that those evidence are not being tampered with. They are original. System logs, for example. System logs can be tampered by administrators. You have to understand how those system logs are protected in a way that the logs that you are getting have not been tampered with. Those are also important considerations for evidence. And you should protect the evidence you get, right? And if you have any doubts about the evidence, you must ask the main business contact that you have for that audit, for that process, and confirm that the evidence is true. Okay? The golden rule of an internal auditor is never accept we do it without corroborating documentary or technical evidence. Verbal assurances are insufficient. You are an internal auditor, you are part of the organization, you are maybe colleagues, you may be having coffee with them or lunch with them occasionally. Your independence cannot be compromised, right? You, as an internal auditor, when you are performing the audit, you have no friends. You are an independent professional who has a responsibility to give assurance on the effectiveness of information security management practices in your organization. So do that job. Okay. Let's say you're auditing quarterly user access reviews for finance system. What is this? Basically, who has what rights in the finance system? That is the main thing we are doing. Now, why is that required? I explained to you earlier is that everybody should have only those rights which are required for them to perform their job and no more, right? To check that, you need a um, um, regular review. Now, one source will be review the access review log. How, when was the last time you reviewed the access? Who reviewed the access? Now, if it shows completed by IT manager on a particular date, great. That is one thing. But is that the final word? No, it is not. Then you say, how did you do it? Right? Where you examined it, who approved it? Where are the email trails? Did you send it to someone? Who checked it? Show me those evidences, right? Then find an email from the IT manager to the finance director requesting their input and approval for the access review list. But is that the end of the story? No. Check the finance systems audit log. Confirm that on whenever the date the identified users in the review were deprovisioned from the system or their roles were changed as per the inputs from the finance director. Finance director tells IT, oh, this person, her role has changed, so he doesn't need this role anymore. He's not a maker, he's a checker in the system, so give him checker role. Okay, was that thing done on time? Or within a reasonable period of time once you got that confirmation from the finance manager. This closes the loop. This shows that the IT or the application owner who was supposed to send a request for review to the right person did it. The right person actually looked at the roles and sent it back, and it was implemented as per the approval from the correct stakeholder. All three independent sources, the formal log, interdepartmental communication, and system changes corroborate that a genuine access review occurred. It was collaborative and it led to concrete action that was tied to the governance requirement. This provides strong assurance. Now, what can be the red flag? If only the access review log existed, but there are no corroborating emails or system changes, it would suggest a checkbox exercise, like I mentioned earlier, than a genuinely effective control, right? The if all these three match, then that control is effective. In what is the effectiveness of the control? Is that the user has only those rights that the user requires, no more, no less. Okay. Now, another quick thing we'll quickly have. Quickly go through. We have a few minutes left, and I don't think we can cover this now. Practical sampling. As an auditor, you will always be asking yourself the question: what samples do I check? How many samples do I check? How do I give comfort that everything is working fine? Should I go back 3 months? Should I go back 3 years? Should I go back 5 years? Right? What? And should I only look at my audit period? Maybe, maybe not. Okay. Now, there are various kinds of, typically what we say is that your audit sampling should be proportionate to the potential impact on the business of the risk for which you are trying to collect the sample. Okay, the higher the risk, the higher the impact on potential impact on business, the more deeper you should look into it. Therefore, your audit should also be planned in such a way that you consider those parts of your audit which have maximum business impact. Put most of your resources, time, effort, people, skills, technology to auditing those parts of your audit scope which have maximum business impact. That way, you minimize an audit risk, because audit is an action that you are performing that itself has risk, is that you might miss checking something material. So once you also perform your audit, select the scope according to the materiality of the risk. You are also minimizing audit risk, and that is also your job as internal auditors. Okay. Now, any control that needs to be executed or tested on a monthly level, you can say, okay, I'll check the last 3 to 6 months, 6 or maybe more than for high risk items, right? For example, user access reviews for critical systems, sample the last 6 months of access review reports. Access review, like we spoke in the last slide. I'm sorry if you raise your hand. I can't see because I'm on my iPad and I can only see my screen. So if you have to unmute yourself and say something, okay? Now, if you're looking at weekly controls, let's say a backup or scanning for vulnerabilities because there is an update that has come to Windows, Linux, Mac OS systems. You're scanning them for vulnerabilities. You can simply look at last 4 weeks or 5 weeks, depending on the on critical vulnerabilities. Now, there will be rules. If there is a critical vulnerability patch, they typically in IT, we will say it should be applied within 2 to 3 days. A non-critical patch, maybe you can apply it over the next weekend. That could be 7 or 8 days away, and that's fine. I'm hearing some noises. I'm not sure if somebody is saying something. Okay, we have 2 or 3 minutes now. Now, for daily controls, for example, database backup is an example I took earlier. Sample the last 2 weeks of backup logs. Now, backups are incomplete. Even if the backup is successful, please note this, backups are incomplete if the veracity or the integrity of the data that is backed up is not tested. And the integrity of the backup can be tested only if that backup data is restored, because there is no guarantee that once you back up something, it will be restored in a usable state. Even when backup are restored, it is important to check if the restored data is usable. Okay. For high impact controls, which, for example, privileged access. Who are privileged? What are privileged access? Privileged access are those roles which have high level of access. They are all administrators, owners, operators of systems in IT, right? They are people who will go and fix the firewall, fix the network, fix servers, go and enter applications, manage databases, do backups. All those people typically have privileged access. Privileged access are people not like you and me who simply go connect our computers. They open applications, they enter data, look at reports, make Excel, send emails, go and attend meetings. No, these are people who are actually making changes to equipment. Those are privileged access. Now, there are certain rules on how privileged access to systems should be allowed. Every time an administrator wants to access a system, there should be a process of approval. He should justify the need for that access. I think that's all we have time for. Okay, I'll just quickly take this. In addition to the number of samples based on the frequency of implementing that control and the criticality of that risk based on the potential impact on business, you should also consider 2 or 3 different kind of logs, or 2 or 3 different kind of results of the control, which is a normal case. We'll take the example of how you will audit a privileged access management that I just spoke about, right? You are auditing privileged access to production databases. Now, databases have sensitive critical information that almost all organizations depend on. Database administrators can bypass control and make changes to data if their access to databases is not managed, controlled, and monitored. Okay, so a normal case is you will sample a standard privileged access request from an active database administrator. You will verify that the request was submitted using, I use the example of ticketing system. Maybe the company doesn't have a ticketing system. He sent a mail to the manager approved it. Okay, and the manager approved it, then access granted within 24 hours and logged in the access management system. Or whatever is access management system, it might be a simple Excel file, and that's all right? It doesn't have to be a formal software. But what we are looking for is a discipline of request, approval, and then access, and then logging what that person did. Now, in the edge case, always look for a normal case. Edge case is an administrator who quit. When was his access revoked? Right? Who what was the process of informing someone that that access has to be revoked, right? What was the date of the last working date of that administrator, and then what was the date of revocation of that administrator's rights? In many organizations, administrator rights are the last to be revoked because it takes time for someone else to take over. They may not have a second administrator. Only one or two people may have administrative rights. They may not have a backup for that person only. Even that can happen. Okay. Now, failure cases. Now, I have written them as failure cases because the process, the normal case process of request, approval, granting of rights has failed in because there might be an emergency need. Now, if you look at this, these are all very practical considerations. These are things that happen. The database administrator may suddenly get an alert which say the database is under stress of some reason. He may need to immediately go and fix something and not wait to wake up the manager at 2 a.m. Right? He may go and fix it. Now, some IT, I've audited, they try to be very smart. They said, but we have too many emergency changes. All changes were emergency only. Why? They didn't want to follow the process. Then I went to the leadership. I told them this is what is happening. This is not right. They said, what do you want me to do? I said, I want to spend more time and understand each and every case. And then I broke down each and every case, as many as I could, as much as they could remember, right? And told them that these were not emergency changes and these could have been controlled better. And then I submitted that in my report as evidence. Okay. Testing only normal cases will miss critical gaps. The edge cases reveal whether offboarding processes work. The failure case test whether emergency procedures are controlled and monitored together. These three cases provide comprehensive assurance that the privileged access control operates effectively under all these three conditions. Okay. Okay, this is also important. Any control can have two aspects to it. Is it designed correctly? Is it operating effectively? Now, designed correctly is, um, I spoke about a backup, right? We say database has to be backup daily. Is that good enough for the purpose? What will be the effect? Let's say a database is backed up at 11 p.m. and the next night before the backup happens at 10:59, the database fails. So your data is now 24 hours old. Is that good enough for your organization? Right? Does the organization understand the impact of one backup a day? If they understand it, if they understand the impact of losing 24 hours of data, they say in 24 hours we have only 3 or 4 transactions, we don't mind. We'll recreate them. Absolutely fine. But if you have 20,000 transactions in 24 hours, how are you going to recreate them? That is not appropriate. That is an ineffective design. Now, that design, whatever the design is, it is implemented by management using whatever tactics they need to implement. Is that effective? Now, is the backup happening as per the governance framework setup? Everyday backup, as I said, maybe 5%, 10% backup events fail. Is IT monitoring it? Is IT fixing it? Is IT doing something to reduce the occurrence of that failure? Right? So this is an operating effectiveness versus the control design. Control design can also be inappropriate because someone did not appreciate the impact on the business correctly. They did not perform the business impact analysis properly. Okay, we'll conclude. So we'll quickly move through it. Your findings should be defensible. Defensible in that your evidence should come from a proper source. It should be complete, and the basis is that you should look at every evidence and your conclusion to say, is this matching the 27001 annexure that I have matched it against? Have I matched it against the right control in ISO 27001? Understand the difference between management, that is governance slash management, the governance slash management controls. There are different controls in ISO 27001. When we go deeper into it in our session that starts in Feb, we'll talk about it in detail. I look forward to seeing many of you there. Class, now consistency in your reporting is important. Now, what you call as severe, right, have a basis. You might call something as non-conformant with high severity. Now, how do you classify it as high? What is the basis for that classification? You should have some consistent method of classifying non-conformant parts of the information security management system, so that when there is progress implemented, there is clear change in your non-conformance the next time you audit it. That gives the management, the senior leadership, sorry, the senior leadership or the sponsor of the audit comfort that the consistency in your reporting is leading to consistent improvement. Okay. Now, not all points in your internal audit report may point to non-conformity, that this is not working, this is not working according to ISO 27001, this is not working according to our policy. It may be that you have some observations that, listen, this doesn't look good. You are maintaining your backups, you are retrying your backups, you're doing performing your backup correctly, very good. Backups are failing, that's all right. You're also retrying your backups again and again and again and again. You're retrying your backups, then backups are working. But are you going to continue doing this for the rest of your life? Our recommendation is, please improve this, right? That is an opportunity for improvement. Please improve this. Can you automate deletion of some old files? Like I mentioned, that is an opportunity for improvement. We should also mention those. Also, audit reports should have a positive tone. They should be written in such a way that they are not critical, but they are objective. You are only telling the story as it is. Your observation should also be based on facts. They should not be wishy-washy saying that the security is inadequate, right? The backup is inadequate. It means nothing. It means nothing to anyone. To you, you should say that the backup does not meet the governance criteria of everyday backups. There are, because I found 10 instances of failed backup. So many were retried successfully. So many were not retried. On the days these backups were not retried, your recovery from 24 hours, it became 48 hours, right? Business, did you accept that increase in your exposure? That is what you have to say. Not just by saying that backup is inadequate is not good. Okay. Uh, Kappa. Kappa is corrective and preventive actions. That's what it stands for. Um, a good kappa or a suggestion of a corrective and preventive action is that, it can have an immediate action. I gave you the example of a backup failing again and again. Clear storage and restart backup. That's a great corrective action to give, right? Which solves the immediate problem at least, right? And then the root cause analysis is, maybe storage monitoring was not effective. Maybe they don't have enough space. Maybe they are not deleting old backups. And I have this problem, right? I develop websites. I keep data of my clients. I have backups now for 2 months. I haven't deleted them, right? I have to now remind. That's a good reminder. I have to go and delete them. I haven't automated it because these are quite new, but I will be writing a script which will delete all backups which are more than 3 days old. I don't need them, right? So, the corrective action could be that re-enable storage monitoring with alerts at 70 and 85%, set capacity thresholds, and then start automated deletion of old backups, like I said. Preventive action could be that update change management procedure to include restore monitoring as mandatory post-change verification step. The owner of this will be the infrastructure manager. Due date is 30 days. Implement all this within 30 days, not including immediate action. Immediate action, not 30 days, right? Preferably couple of days, 2, 3 days, 4 days, 1 week, not more than that. Evidence is updated monitoring dashboard, retention policy document, revised change management, SOP. And quick questions that you can use in your organization if you are already part of an internal audit team is, can we trace the top 5 risks to control and evidence based on those 6 parameters, 6 steps, the spine slide that we saw? When was the last management review of the governance? Now, the governance or the management has 2 roles. They have to evaluate, they have to direct, and they have to monitor if their directions are being met, if their directions are being fulfilled. So they have to evaluate risks, They have to direct how those risks have to be managed or mitigated, and then they have to monitor. All those things are important things for senior leadership or the governance to do. Are any CAPAs, that is, corrective and preventive actions overdue? And do we verify effectiveness of those control and preventive? I'm repeatedly using the word effective because we are as concerned with the spirit of the law as we are about the letter of the law. The spirit of the law in this case becomes more important for us. We want to ensure that controls are designed to be effective and they are implemented to be effective both. Do we have any measurable security objectives with trends? And for privileged access, do we have reviews and real enforcement and not just tick boxing or check boxing? Okay. Now, in our longer program, we will I speak more about hands-on work, like the actual examples, and these are all examples from real audits that I have conducted. These are not wishy-washy examples picked up from the internet. These are real examples, right? And we will look at the whole audit cycles from planning to verification and how to craft your internal audit reports. What are the important sections to include? What is the kind of a language to include? Language doesn't really matter as long as you are objective and the meaning is clear, right? So there is this, if you read this, what is that book called? I don't remember the name of the book. Eats, Shoots, and Leaves, right? Pick up that book. It's a book on grammar. It is important to use the right language. So if you eat, shoots, and leaves, depends where you put the comma, will change the meaning of the sentence. Eats, shoots, and leaves. If we put a comma after eats, then somebody is eating and shooting somebody and leaving, right? But if you say it eats, no comma, shoots and leaves without a comma, it's probably a panda, right? It eats, shoots, and leaves. And I think the book has the panda on its cover. So your language, how you express it correctly, objectively, with evidence, and not wishy-washy statements is also very important, right? We will look at how to conduct internal audits, how to be professional about them, right? How to ask for evidence, how to prepare for the audit. There is a pre-audit preparedness step that also we can take, which helps us make the audit smoother, right? The way I look at audit is to transform audit from a compliance burden into a strategic risk management asset. The audit function itself is an asset because the audit itself is a control. Audit is seen as a burden. Audit is seen as a cost. However, the audit is as much important a control as a data backup is. With that, I will let you go, guys. Any thoughts? Anyone? As expected, I take longer than I should, and that's something I have not been able to fix. So, but thank you for your patience, everyone. I hope it helped.
Hi, sir.
Uh,
Uh,
yes, Harish. Hi.
Hi, this is Harish. I'm studying MS Accounting and Finance in UK. I'm
Wow.
also preparing Certified Internal Audit certification. It
Nice.
will helpful for me finding the job opportunities in UK.
Ah, wrong person to
No,
ask,
no,
Harish.
no, no.
Honestly.
I'm asking I have no previous experience in internal audit, but I have only level 1 and level 2 of CIA, Certified Internal Audit certification.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't have any practical experience regarding this internal audit, so that's why.
See, I'm wrong person to ask. Honestly, I don't think I'm qualified to give you any kind of career advice. It'll work. Uh, I think if you are good, dedicated, and professional, you can succeed, certainly.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's all I can say. Yes, one of you had posted something on the message. Please speak, anyone. Please speak because I may not be looking at this thing. Uh, I don't know how can. What do you mean successful percentage? Tressa, I'm sorry, I don't understand this. Quiz database has how many questions? Which one? I don't know. Oh, you mean my website, Trissa? How do you know about it, sir? Michael, I don't know the answer. GISA Council, ask them, please. Sarita, I don't know what you mean by implementer part. We will look at practical aspects of how to audit, how to create a report. Yes, we will. But the focus as in all my sessions, I teach CISA, I teach CISM, I teach CDPSC, I teach CDP, I teach parts of the CIA certification that our friend just now was talking about. Who was this? Harish. Harish was talking about CIA. I also teach parts of that certification course. Important thing is to focus on principles and process. The principles and process remain the same. If you ask me what are the 93 controls in MXRA, I don't know. I don't need to know. But I know the principles. Once I read a control from an Excel sheet, I know what part of the system that it applies to because I understand the principles of risk and risk mitigation. And that is the most important thing. When I start my CISA class, the first two words I mention are risk and enterprise objectives. Every enterprise wants to meet its objectives of running smoothly. Technology helps in that process. Technology helps in that process, but technology brings its own risks. IT's job is to meet the enterprise objectives while managing those risks to the extent that the company or the organization is willing to. You understand the principles, they are all the same across all these certifications. There is no difference. Does that make sense? Thank you, Kumar. Have you been to other sessions I have conducted, sir? Thank you very much. It's Tracer, I think there are about 600, 700 questions, and I've been trying to add another 1,000 questions for CISA. I will hopefully get to that. I have. Yes, you will get a lot of inputs, but our focus, Srideep, our focus will be more towards practical auditing of internal or organizational processes and systems using ISO 27001 as the reference. Uh, Again, I'm saying the same thing to you, right? It is about principles. Focus on basic principles of risk, which I'll continuously be reiterating, and you will be able to, get through to the ISO lead auditor certification because you will understand the principles, right? The basics are important. The foundation is important. Yeah. If you're playing cricket, you have to get your elbow straight up in a straight drive. You get that right, then whether it's an off drive or an on drive, the principle remains the same. Does that make sense? Any other questions, guys? If not, I'll wish you good night. There is a CPE form to be filled up. The link is here. And the link to registering for the course is also here. The course starts on 28th of February, and I hope to see you there. You have a good evening, have a good night, have a good day, and I'll see you along the path, along the way in the next webinar or in the next course. Thank you. Bye-bye.